Welcome on in, guys. Three bold takes again. And if you missed our other video, Nick Saban is retiring from college football. So naturally, the first question that comes up is, well, who is going to replace the GOAT, right? Because that's some big shoes to fill. Arguably the biggest shoes to fill in all of football. We know that Bill Belichick just, quit being the Patriots head coach. That's a big shoes to fill. But so is this one at the University of Alabama. And there's been some lists floating around, and I kind of have one that was some likely targets, and I kind of want to discuss that. And the list, I think there's 6 names on this list. Number one is Dan Lanning that was on the list. We now know he's not leaving Oregon per his own words. That was my number one pick. Quinn, I know that was your number one pick, and I believe Chase, that was your number one pick as well. So unfortunate news there that he is not leaving Oregon. Second on the list is Kalen DeBoer from Washington. Very interesting name there. Number three is Dabo Sweeney. Four, James Franklin. Five, Mike Norvell. And then number six is Marcus Freeman, which I don't know. We will discuss all of these, but Quinn, first initial thoughts on the list. Is it a good list? And then who is your number one pick to succeed Nick Saban?
I think it's a pretty strong list. My favorite thing that I noticed about it is you're leaving off names like Vrabel and D'Amico Ryans. I get the Ryans played at Alabama, Vrabel's in Nashville. I just don't think if you're the University of Alabama, you go the route of an NFL head coach and bringing him in to be your college head coach because those worlds are just really different. Like a head coach of an NFL team is kind of like a general manager of a company, whereas the head coach of a football team is he's that to the coaching staff, but he's more like a guardian figure almost to the team. And then like how you build a roster is completely different. So I don't think if you're one of the premier programs of college football, you get an NFL guy and bring him in. I think you get a proven college guy and bring him in. So I like that about the list. As far as what I would like to see for Alabama. If I'm in charge of picking who Nick Saban's successor is, I think there's a certain route you go. I think you go with a guy who has not won a title. I think you want someone who's desperately hungry to win one, but you have to walk a fine line of they haven't won the title, but they've proven they could get there. So to me, that means you've proven that you can recruit at a high level, you've proven that you can compete on a high level, and you haven't won the title yet. So immediately take Dabo out of the equation there. I don't think Dabo Sweeney's a good fit personally. Also, you're talking about an SEC program hiring a coach who's been pretty stubborn about NIL and transfer portal, and frankly, in the SEC, you're just not going to recruit and compete at the highest level without it. So Dabo off the list. Like you said, Dan Lanning's off the list. That's why he was my number one pick. I think he's the perfect fit when you combine all of those things into one. So that leaves what Marcus Freeman, uh, James Franklin, Mike Norvell, and Kalen DeVore.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Personally, I think Franklin's had too long to prove that he's not the guy you want. If you're Alabama, you've watched him at now Penn State for 8 years now, I believe, and he can't get past the biggest two. And so I think that's enough proof to you that you don't want that. So get him off the list. I, I'm between Mike Norvell and Kalen DeBoer. Personally, I know you two are not a fan of this, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I lean Norvell. Now I know I'm going to jump ahead of both of you before you say it. You've got issues with the fact that his team quit before the Orange Bowl and that there's culture issues there. I don't buy any of that crap. I believe he was stuck between the biggest rock and hard place ever of motivating a lot of transfer portal kids to play in a bowl game that wasn't a playoff game after they had an undefeated season. You have not seen any other coach have to deal with that, and I'm going to give him a pass in that regard. When we talk about other things, his ability to recruit in the South, I think he nudges out the other guys in that regard. Maybe James Franklin has him beat there. Um, when you talk about proving the ability to compete at the highest level. I mean, what he's taken Florida State right up into competitive in 3 years, from outside of bowl contention to playoff contention in 3 seasons. Then you have the final thing, which is young, hungry, and hasn't won a title. Because to me, the biggest motivator for a coach at Alabama is when you go into that spring A-Day game and you have to do the Walk of Champions, walking past the row of statues of coaches that have won the title. Do you have the dog in you that wants you to win that title? And that's why, like I said, Norvell and Kalen DeBoer are the two on that list that I think fit that description the best. And the reason I lean Norvell over DeBoer is strictly his experience in recruiting in the Southeast.
So I have 3 hard no's. Norvell is on that list. I'm not gonna go into it a whole lot. I just don't like the way, and Quinn already hit on it. I'll just leave it there. Sweeney's another one. Sweeney is the game is kind of passed Sweeney by, and also without elite coordinators, kind of like Saban. He's been worse than Saban, of course, but without his elite coordinators, Sweeney has been middle of the pack, if that, in the ACC. Don't even want to figure out what he's going to do in the SEC, especially with Texas and Oklahoma joining this next year. Lastly, James Franklin. Goodness gracious. Man is the little brother of little brothers. You guys know how much I can't stand him. To think if he was a coach of Alabama, I'm not seeing more than 8 wins a year at Alabama. I'm thinking with the expanded territory of the SEC. I'm not a fan of James Franklin. Don't think he's going to get it done in the long run. My guys that I like, Quinn hit on a couple. I kind of am in favor of the NFL guys. D'Amico Ryans, that one's a tough one for me. I would love D'Amico Ryans to be there. I think he would have the intensity, the culture fitting that Saban kind of had. It would kind of just fit seamlessly. I think he's a great leader. He's a young coach, could be there for a long time, a lot like Saban. My thing is, do you hire a guy that's going to be there 3 to 5 years? Or do you hire a guy that's going to be like, okay, this is another guy that's going to be here 10, 15 years? That's kind of where you're at. D'Amico's young enough. I think he could be that. He could be here for the next 10 to 15 years if he wanted to be. However, kind of like Quinn mentioned, does he get off that perch of the NFL? He's had a really successful season this first year. CJ Stroud, he's already built a great community and camaraderie in Houston. That one's a tough bite for me. Vrabel, I love Vrabel. I think Vrabel's going to do the same thing with the culture. I'm a little worried how he fits into the college football game based on the transfer portal and NIL, how he deals with that. But he's not tied to a team right now. However, I think he's still going to stay in the NFL, but I am a fan of him just culture fit wise. Last one, my number one is Kalen DeBoer from Washington. To see what he's done quietly in Washington, I'm a little worried that a lot of that is kind of like Eli Drinkwitz, and he's had a lot of senior success and he's had a lot of guys that put him in that position. So I'm a little worried about that, but I think he could be successful. And if his recruiting tactics are going to transfer over, I think that could help. And then you got other guys like Lane and Sark that could fit in too. I'm a little worried because those aren't all around guys. And why I liked Lanning more than those two is that he had both offense and defense and culture fit. I think Lane would be a little more goofy for Alabama. I would still love Lane, don't get me wrong. I think his offense would transcend Alabama football, but he would be a little goofy in my opinion, something that Alabama hasn't traditionally had. But I'm going to go left field here, guys. Give me Kansas Jayhawks. Leopold. Do you offer him that job potentially? What he's done at Kansas, him being able to recruit, him being able to win at Kansas. Is that a shot, an outside shot? What you got, Quinn?
May I interject? If you want to go that route, I think the way you go is Mark Stoops. Similar deal where you build a competitive program at a school who didn't traditionally have it. However, you did that in SEC play, in SEC recruiting territory with a more prestigious background being a Stoops brother. I think that if you go that route, but I think you're a bigger program than that, frankly.
With Leopold, I'm just thinking this guy, he can step in and I think can be successful at Alabama. If you're successful at Kansas and turning them around from just a basketball school, I think he can be successful at Alabama as well. It's kind of a left field. It's not a full on, I'm still a Kalen DeBoer kind of guy, but having Leopold there, I think could could potentially be maybe a stopgap guy. And Freddie, before I let you go, the biggest thing here, it is daunting to follow in Nick Saban's footsteps. Let's get that out of the way. I think that's why Lanning turned it down. Lanning is 39, 38. Okay, let me go follow Nick Saban. He screws up. If you're not winning 11, 12 games a year, going to the SEC championship and probably winning the SEC championship, you're a failure in every Alabama fan's eyes. And that's the problem here. Lanning, if that wasn't on top of every coach that's out there right now, I think Lanning would have had the job and would have taken the job. But that is a scary sight to think that if you're not winning 10 to 12 games a year in SEC championships, you could be out in 3 to 5 years. Fred?
Yeah, so Kalen DeBoer has a coaching record of 104-12. That's some serious winning there, going on and what he's done. I honestly did not know that. Did not know his record was that good, but I want to do a little bit of research here. Currently, Mike Norvell is the leading candidate odds wise at plus 200. Dabo is at plus 300. DeBoer is plus 300. Lane Kiffin plus 600, which I want to add this. Plus 600 is up from what he was just a few hours ago. A few hours ago, he was in the plus 3,000 territory. So significant changes there. James Franklin's plus 4,000 odds. Listen, you know I'm a James Franklin lover, right? I love what he stands for. I love what he did at Vandy, and honestly, although he has not gotten over the hump from Ohio State and Michigan, besides the one time he did win the Big Ten and the Rose Bowl, um, he's a winner. He just is. I mean, he's going to give you 9, 10 wins a year. And I believe he could do that at Alabama in the SEC as well. Now, is that what you want? I don't know. Personally, fun fact: Billy Napier is plus 5,000 odds. If that shows you the likelihood of James Franklin becoming the head coach at Alabama, just 1,000 away. Tied with James
Why is
Franklin
he?
is Pat Shermer from Colorado. Tied odds with James Franklin, so he's not going to be the head coach. So for me, Lane Kiffin is my number one at this point, although that was not, a name on our list. So from the list that we have, I don't
Can I?
oppose. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to ask y'all something. What do you think? Because I before we got on here, I was reading an article about Sarkeesian, and originally I didn't consider him at all because we're talking about Texas, and no one's going to outbid Texas money wise. The buyout for Sarkeesian is only like I think it's 6 mil, which is significantly less than Lanning. Lanning was 20 million. What do you think of the possibility of Sarkeesian?
You go for it, but Sarkeesian doesn't do it because you're Texas, and then you're also in the SEC as well. Why go to Alabama and follow Nick Saban? Fred?
I love Steve personally. My top three before the Landing news was Lanning, Lane, and Sarkeesian. Like that was the three, right? Because ESPN came out today and even said that Alabama is going after replacements that have ties to Nick Saban, that is also a established head coach, right? So that means they have history in college football. When you think about it like that, there's only so many people that could fit that criteria. Now, when it comes to Mike Norvell, yes, I'm not a huge fan of Mike Norvell because of the one thing, and that was the culture for the Orange Bowl and how he handled being left out of the playoffs. But let's be real, right? If Alabama was undefeated and was left out of the playoffs, do you not think you would have the same thoughts and the same actions? Yes, you would. So you can't penalize somebody for having a realistic reaction to something that happened. Now, was it bad? Yes, he should have got the players up. That's his job, right? But what he's done at Florida State, and guys, I had Florida State making the playoffs preseason. Like, I love what he's done at Florida State. Young guy, I think he could do great things at Alabama. I don't want Dabo. If you'd asked me 4 years ago, he would have been my number one. I don't want him anymore simply because of what's transpired with the way college football is going. Chase, you bring up the NFL thing, and Quinn, you said that you don't like that idea. But college football is becoming more and more like the NFL with transfer portals, with NIL. That's free agency. That's basically a salary cap because you only have so much in your collective that you can spend on certain players for NIL. So like, I don't hate that idea, but my number one is probably of this list that we have is DeBoer as well. His record is very good, right? But also their offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb, Alabama wanted him instead of Tommy Rees. They wanted him bad, and he would not come to Alabama because he loves DeBoer so much. Um, so if DeBoer comes, I would not be surprised if you see some assistants come with him, and that would be great news for Alabama. No offense to Tommy Rees by any stretch of the imagination. I think he got better as the year went along, but he's just not the guy, I think, offensively for Alabama at this current point in time. Um, Lane is my number one, but he wasn't on the list, and it realistically probably not coming. But guys, let us know down below, who would you pick if you could hand pick a replacement for Nick Saban? Who would you choose? And we also got to keep our expectations right. There's only been one other Nick Saban in college football history, and that's Bear Bryant, who, oh, by the way, did coach for Alabama. So I know Alabama fans are used to having these great coaches that win championship after championship. We're never going to see a Nick Saban again. And I know they said that with Bear Bryant, right? And then here came Nick Saban. But I genuinely don't think we're ever going to see another Nick Saban. Chase?
What 1 second. So Greg Byrne, the AD at Alabama. Remember when they hired for basketball? They went and got a guy from the University of Buffalo named Nate Oates, who has turned around the basketball program. So this could be somebody just out of the blue. It might not be a big name that we're looking at. So, scour the country, look at small schools, even group of five, smaller power fives, it doesn't matter. They're going to hire the right guy with Nick Saban's blessing as well. So just kind of think of that. Nate Oates was a small town guy or a small college guy. This could be as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next week. Peace out.